Everybody, I will call the meeting to order. We have our Finance, Administration, and Police Subcommittee, a special meeting today, the 2nd of February. And welcome. You are coming along with me while I multitask just a little bit. So I'm looking here. It looks like communications, we have none. I didn't see any in the agenda. This is my first meeting for this particular subcommittee. So I read through the packet, of course, reviewed last meeting's minutes, and saw the updates that were contained within. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and move on to public comment. Members of the public wishing to make a comment on any item that's not on the agenda, please feel free to do so. Either raise your hand so Irene can see you, or *9 can indicate that you'd like to have a message as well. Irene, anybody that'd like to have public comment?
There's no public comment at this time, Chair, and I just did want to share that Councilmember Bagby shared, which staff is going to share again on our newsletter for the SoCo BioBiz competition. And there'll be a little bit more on that regarding the countywide collaboration of, the forest experts, business leaders, public officials. They're asking applicants to directly address what is explained in the RFP. So we have the request for proposal information will all be again on our newsletter coming out this week.
Excellent, thank you, Irene. Any additional comments or anything? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to approval of the minutes for January 5th. Again, I reviewed them, didn't see anything. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
All right, anybody against?
That would
Any
be
changes?
you.
I abstain, right?
It's the goop. No, you do not have to abstain. That is a common misconception that gets repeated at board meetings. As long as you've looked over the minutes and you have checked in to make sure that they are consistent with what other staff and attendees have said, you're allowed to vote on this item.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought, but I still haven't reached that point of not second guessing everything that I think is right. So I appreciate that.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
So yeah, I absolutely did not see anything egregious in the minutes. So Irene, please consider the minutes approved.
One of my pet peeves at board meetings, even supervisors do it, Jason. So I'm glad you're ahead of the game.
Right on, thank you. All right, so that moves us on to current items for discussion. First and foremost, we have a proposal from Deep Valley Security for an access control and intercom system. It looked like we had an invoice and some other information in our packet. Who would like to kind of offer up the overview on this one?
Mayor and Chair, I'll offer up the overview and welcome comments from Finance Director Holmes and Chief Ferguson as needed, or for additional.
Thanks, David. Take it away.
This proposal is included in your packet for review. By way of background, the police department most recently installed security cameras around the police facility. It's obviously a secure facility, and it's necessary to, monitor the both ingress and egress, as well as activities outside the police station. Most recently, we during the City Hall closure, we've experienced an uptick in folks residing outside City Hall on the steps. But also we've experienced some incidents with the community, and given the rise in concern, particularly related to the uprising, relative to political matters, we thought it was prudent to install or consider installation of a security camera at City Hall, just to be able to document any concerns or issues, and be able to have that be monitored by our police department. So what's included in your packet is a proposal to install a security camera at the front of City Hall. And I welcome any additional comments from either Finance Director Holmes or Chief Ferguson on one, the cost proposal, or just the necessity, or at least the staff's recommendation for a proposed security camera at City Hall.
Ms. Finance Director, Chief, any comments you'd like to add?
I don't know if Susie wanted to go first. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, no, I think David did a good job of the overview. And I don't have anything additional to add unless there are questions.
And I'll only
I have a
add
question.
that, oh, so go ahead, Melanie, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll wait till you're done with your statements.
I was just going to add that, like Dave said, these were in talks for a while, and it's definitely beneficial to the city to have this type of a system. There was some discussion about whether or not this could somewhat piggyback into the current system at the police department. And I think that's yet to be determined. We'll certainly inquire about that. But this kind of gives them their own standalone monitor, which is really important to determine who's walking up the front steps of the city hall. And I think some of the other discussion came, and maybe later on, looking at a door buzzer type access to City Hall where that can be controlled, who comes in and out based on who's at the front waiting. So I think that's also something that was in the works and discussed. And that's all I have.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple of questions. If you're still there. You might be frozen. It sucks when the chair's internet is bad.
And Melanie.
Yeah. We really can't hear you, Jason. The connection's really bad. You know what, Jason, if you can hear me, you might want to log off and try to, you might want to log off and log back in.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes. What are you doing? Are you standing on one? Are you standing on one foot? Have your arm up in the air?
Doing a service dance, that's for sure.
All right. Okay. No, yeah, you're back. You were gone. Okay.
I'm so sorry about that. I understand you had some questions. I heard everything you guys were saying, but you could not hear me. So forgive me. Please, Melanie, go right ahead.
Okay. So just, yeah, a couple of questions. And it looks like this is kind of still in, early stages. It's like, hey, we need we need some kind of system here. So I was wondering because I just couldn't tell, and maybe that was just because I'm not an expert on this. So I was wondering, does it cover the front door and the back door? And then on, buzzing people in, would you be able to do that, remotely? I'm assuming that there'll be I have a Ring like everybody else now. So I'm assuming that it'll at least have like that kind of basic functionality so that whether people are at City Hall or not, they'll be able to get the feed and see who's, trying to, buzz in or communicate with somebody. So I'm just kind of like getting a feel for the functionality at front and the back door, of course.
I can answer that. Oh,
go ahead,
David. It would only be at the front door. It would not be at the back door at that cost point. It would have a monitor that you could move around the office, but essentially would sit at the front desk. That person could then speak to, kind of like a Ring, speak to the person at the doorbell and see them. And then if we get to a point where we want to open doors, it will also open the door and then shut the door and lock it again behind them.
Okay. But it doesn't have any kind of streaming capability so that you can see you could see it if you were, the camera's just going to go to the monitor. So analog signal to the monitor.
Yes, unless we ask for something different. That's just what we were looking for at the time when we were thinking we might open. But yeah, just analog is.
So, and then I guess for Chief, is there a camera on the back door already? Okay, so
So
that's not an issue.
I was going to answer that because when we did our install, we included this rear area parking for the safety of officers, but luckily enough, it also covers the area back there for any concerns. So that's already covered under ours.
Okay, good, because I come in and out of there all the time. That's good to know.
Oh, we notice.
Yeah, me and my little dog, I know. There she is again. Okay, so that kind of covers, I mean, it just seems to me, it's like if you think that that's enough and it's cost effective, I don't have a problem with it, but I kind of question, if you're going to have a system like this, that we have, something a little bit more sophisticated, so that you could stream, and record who, the goings on at the front door, just like you could from I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of, well, gee, if my little, consumer product does this, why aren't we getting that from this professional security firm? That's just, there's a little disconnect there for me. That's all. Those are all my questions.
And to respond to that, we can Councilmember, we can certainly follow up with Deep Valley. They have the necessary experience with the technology to determine whether there's more sophisticated camera system that we can install. The ones on the police department are 24/7 and they're recorded, and that data is not just recorded but maintained as a record. So we can look at and evaluate if that would be there's an opportunity to do that with the existing system, existing server for the camera that would, again, if this is supported for the front of City Hall.
May I ask here real quick, is there a purpose for terms of enforcement as to why the police station's cameras happen to have to be stored locally? Because my mind is taking me to the cloud. If this company offers a cloud-based security system that's similar to what you guys are looking at now, I'd like to see the comparison in prices if that's a feasible thing.
So to answer the first part of that, if I understand you correctly, the need for the cameras to run on the recorded loop and run around the clock, we're by law required to have that because we have a facility here. And that is a standard that you have to have now on your facility. So that's why that was installed under that specific type of program. And then in addition to that, we just had the cameras in the plaza added to that to help us in incidents where we need to, visually either inspect the plaza or if something goes on, we had that capability as well. But I also, the part of the cloud system on that, I'm not 100% sure why that isn't something that was looked at, but certainly could be, I suppose.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. It really where my mind was going is if it's stored locally, then we run into server space issues where it then becomes a compounded expense to improve or increase our memory capability by actually having to expand our own server. Whereas if you purchase cloud access to a company that can already guarantee security or whatever the case may be, we might have an opportunity there without having to expand our own infrastructure. But I have to kind of
they typically, so yeah, Jason, what they typically do, and you're buying one of those like kind of consumer level plans, is that you buy do you buy 1 day, 3 days, or 7 days? And I would imagine that any professional grade is going to be kind of similar. It's going to go to the cloud, and you can designate if it's not a police facility, it's just a normal government facility, then they probably have different plans where you can store it, and then you just pay more for more storage. So that's how our ring works.
And for the city, it's largely a redundancy issue. Until we develop a more formalized policy around digital media and hosting it in the cloud, we do maintain it on site, and that comprises our public record, because that data can be obtained and, provided under a PRA request. And I know the clerk, Irene, we need a digital policy to bring forward, so that, when we save documents, for example, in electronic format, right now we're also saving paper copies to ensure compliance with the Public Records Act. So that there's a little bit of policy work that we need to do to develop, storing records in a cloud-based environment. We can do it as a redundancy measure, but right now we can't do it in replacement of storing the records locally without more work in developing a policy around that.
Okay, so that helps me understand, some of the why as to how we landed here, and I don't oppose it. I just thought we'd compare options if feasible, but it sounds like we have some policy work to do before we could suggest that this type of camera equipment be cloud-based.
Yeah, and I agree. That's kind of where I'm at too, Mr. Mayor. I'm like, okay, this would be a great start, but I also I want to make sure that we don't purchase equipment that we then don't have the flexibility of moving to digital storage at some point. That's just kind of what my question about, is it an analog feed to an analog monitor, or is it a digital feed to a digital monitor that could be then digitized and stored? And so that we don't lose our initial investment in. I'm a little hesitant to invest in analog technology at this point. Let me put it that way.
I can totally see that.
Okay.
And
So actually,
I definitely
yeah,
see the reasons why, you know what I mean? If you can't expand
Right.
on it, then we'd spend the same startup money later and then end up just
Right.
putting this in the goodwill pile,
Right. So yeah. So Susie, can you address that?
I will.
Oh, she can and she will.
Oh, I mean, I can address it with the vendor. I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Okay. No, not at all. But so are you just looking to get our initial assessment on this and feedback, or are you going to take action and buy the system?
Well, we wanted your input on it's an additional technology feature for City Hall, and it comes with a cost, obviously. And I think the feedback you've provided already is very beneficial, and we'll revisit with the vendor. I know they have the necessary expertise to address the questions, and we'll follow up and ensure that we address your questions. And I believe, Susie, if this will ultimately need to go to council for a budget adjustment.
So yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think that we're on the same page. We want to support this, but want to make sure we're going down the right road for longer term. And then we probably also need to address our digital storage policies as well. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, is there any comment by chance from the public on this one, Irene? Any hands raised? I didn't see any pop up, but thought I'd ask.
No hands are raised at this time, Chair.
All right, city staff, you have everything you need on this one. We'll carry on to item B.
We have everything we need.
All right, excellent. So we'll go ahead and get into item B, draft audit for fiscal year 1920 conducted by Cropper Accountancy Corporation. And I believe, Susie, I think I saw your name on this one.
Yes. So this is the audit that we received, and you'll be seeing it again in a few days. At the next council meeting, the auditor will actually be in attendance to answer any questions, but I just kind of wanted to go through some of the highlights, specifically regarding the general fund. The city's revenues were up and so were expenses. However, the fund balance had an increase of $737,000. So the main the main revenue enhancements were cannabis, property tax, and transfers, actually a reduction in transfers, because the sales tax for gas, the gas tax, came in higher than expected, and so did the expenses came in a little lower regarding streets. So there was the amount that the general fund had to contribute toward that was less. So those are the main things that make up that $737,000. Let's see. In total, the city's total net position increased $1.1 million over the last fiscal year. So we're moving in the right direction. Everything is going well. Considering that we moved a bunch of projects from 1920 to 2021. So we should still continue to at least meet the budget going forward. And yeah, I think that's the end of my report. The auditor will be on hand at the next council meeting to answer any questions.
All right.
Yeah, just in terms of the.
Oh, please go ahead, David. Sorry about that.
I was just going to say, I think overall the news about the audit for our fiscal year ending 2020 is positive news. Again, net position is up, revenues are up, our general fund balance is up. On kind of on the other side of the ledger, expenses are up and expenditures are up. So there's some real positive signs with the audit. I think most importantly, it's a reflection of the work that our finance team does to ensure that our books and our expenses and revenues are booked appropriately, and that's a big part of the audit to make sure that the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, as well as GASB. And so, it's a reflection that the financials are in good shape. And so overall, I think it's positive news. I do like to see that we do have a fund balance increase. That often is due to more often than not is due to not making certain expenditures that were budgeted during the fiscal year. So just a little bit of a cautionary note when you see that we're not always guaranteed to increase our fund balance at the end of the year. It's dependent in part on whether we carry out and do all of the activities, programs, and projects that we say we're going to do as part of the budget. And sometimes if we don't, we generate, you can call it what you will, whether it's savings or just, unspent funds that were budgeted for expenditures. But I think, again, as Finance Director Holmes provided as an overview, net position is up, which is a very strong sign that the budget is in good position. And this, again, the auditor will provide a more detailed presentation to council at your next meeting on the 10th.
Great, thank you. I look forward to it. Any initial questions or comments from staff or Melanie?
I guess, first of all, job well done. This is a very positive audit, but it really does show how tenuous our grasp on solvency is. If I might put that very, very gently. That's really, that's understating it. And I think that the challenge with this that I'm going to set to staff right now is to drive home to folks exactly how tenuous, our situation is, and how we are slowly, I mean, this is 2020 and we're basically getting our heads above water from the recession of 2008. And of course, this coming year is going to really reflect the pandemic and the economic slowdown. And so I guess what I'm going to ask staff to do and charge our city manager with doing is really we need to get the word out to the community that we are basically just barely righting the ship through previous policy decisions. We have virtually no margin for error on big decisions and on big policy directions. And I really think that I'm not a great numbers person, but I guess I've been doing it long enough now. This is really clear to me, is that we just, time's up. There's no time for dithering. We have to really move forward very, very carefully financially if we are going to keep this community solvent and economically viable. So I guess what I'm asking you to do is really when we're creating our priorities for the coming year and the coming session, I don't know if dots next to our favorite pet projects is really the best approach. I really think that we need to get very real about where we are financially and the kind of policies and the kind of land use decisions, the kind of administrative decisions that we make, decisions about projects and how we proceed, how we borrow money, when we borrow money, if we borrow money. We need to be very, very clear and have very set priorities to continue to move us in the right direction. So that's that was my take from this draft copy, and that's how I'd like to see. And of course, we have to move it forward to the full council and have them accept it. But then we need to start making, we need to be able to make very tough decisions that can set us on a footing so that we don't slide backward into the situation that the city found itself when we were barely able to keep the lights on after the last recession. It's not acceptable. It's not sustainable. And the community deserves better than that, because they deserve a certain level of service. They deserve a certain level of investment in their quality of lives. And we need to make sure that we're making decisions, sound decisions, every meeting that are based on our financial realities. That's my sermon for the day.
No, thank you. And I think from my point of view, I personally will not add to it. I think it was very impactful, and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree. And where it'll get challenging, of course, is when we get into the weeds of all that, is always where we well, anyway, I digress. So any other questions or comments on this particular item? Otherwise, we will look forward to it at the full council.
I'll just add that of the fund balance in the general fund, approximately half of that amount is unassigned. That's what we can spend on projects that we have not set aside and said, we're committed to spend the money on this. So of that fund balance, we have half that's spendable.
So I do have a follow-up question, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So would it be acceptable at the council meeting? I know we need to present the audit and let the auditor do their thing, and council needs to vote to accept it or reject it. But I wonder if we could have like a little bit of commentary with like a pie chart or something like that, yes, so that we can really visually see. It's like, well, this is, You have
Yeah.
a couple of $100,000 to play with. You really don't have 700 something. Yeah.
Yes, we can definitely do that. And he is planning to have a PowerPoint presentation to go along with his.
It'll be PowerPointed.
Yeah.
And then kind of touching on, another item further down, when will this, obviously this will be available on the city website once it's approved and accepted. When will we be able to start pulling data from it for the widgets and the dashboards to help us communicate where we are financially with the public?
We can do that anytime after it's approved.
Okay. So, but where are you with OpenGov and getting to that point where you can start using it to get data like this out to people?
I see what you're saying. By the middle of February, we should be able to do that. We're just touching up some stuff with OpenGov now.
Great.
And we have
Okay.
our training tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, I'll have more questions about that later.
Right, and before I forget, any hands raised from the public, Irene?
Hands are raised, Chair.
Excellent, thank you.
And,
All right,
Mayor Turner and Mayor and Chair Turner and Councilmember Bagby, if I can just offer one more comment.
please.
I was just going to follow up on Councilmember Bagby's comment about the budget process. And we as staff concur with your perspective on the kind of vote by the dots process that we've used in the past. And last year we had set in motion a process to really focus on our current work plan. And when we were ready to bring that forward, we were doing it under the plan to develop a 2-year budget. So the work plan that we were prepared to bring forward, reflected our staff's proposed work plan that, we think also reflected council's perspective on a lot of the major projects and initiatives, over a 24-month period of time. And what staff has been doing is revising the work plan that we previously presented, reflecting the projects and the activities that we've completed, and I think we've done a decent job of completing some of the key projects that council wanted us to undertake, and a number of those activities are still in process. But what our hope and goal is to bring back that work plan based approach, and present it to council, and then have council really weigh in on the very specific programs, projects, and activities in the work plan. At the end of the day, what we want to be able to do is show what we've accomplished and how we've met our goals, and to do that with specific concrete examples of the work that was completed, and the way of projects. I think most recently we've done some pretty good work in terms of public works projects, for example. But we're getting ready to implement OpenGov. So I mean, that's a major initiative that we funded that we're going to be able to say, it's more than check the box. It's check the box, we've completed it, but comes with it some tools that are going to lead to transparency, and better data around use of city funds, current updates on projects, all of which ties back to those budget goals that we established, part of the budget. So that was kind of our approach, our planned approach. And of course, we welcome council's feedback on how we can better address how to present the work plan and really target, council's goals. By no means, when we bring it forward, does that mean it's set in concrete. We definitely want it to be a living, breathing work plan, and make sure we're reflecting council's priorities, with it within. And I think to your point, Councilor Bagby, we want to make sure that, we're looking at it through, an investment perspective, and, what's our return, and how are we going to ensure that we are, utilizing taxpayer dollars in a wise manner that invests in our community.
Right. And I guess, I'm probably, I might, tell me if I'm getting off of, the agenda item, but this is police administration and finance. So, and I guess what I'm looking for is, we have our stated goals. We have a climate change, climate emergency resolution. We have a policy that I'm assuming somewhere we've written down that we want to be, economically sustainable for the long term, and we're not going to incur debt that can't be, that we don't know where we're going to get the money for a project, or a retirement fund or something. Like we're not going to go backwards to overextending ourselves, for whether it's benefits or health insurance, you name it. So I'm assuming that, we kind of have these really, 30, 40,000 foot priorities, is that we're not going to get our taxpayers into debt. We're going to plan for the climate emergency. We are going to, it's almost more of our values rather than what our goals are. And just like we have in the, the mitigated negative declaration document, you have these, these questions and these categories. Does it meet or exceed, or does it, run counter to, or is there a mitigating circumstance that we're going to, make up for it? Like, for a project, we're going to cut down 5 trees, but we're going to plant 10 new ones, that kind of thing, on just about every decision that we make, because we're at that point where if we're talking about climate change, how does this help us meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals? If we were talking about a new housing project or a commercial project, how does this help us meet our economic goals or our housing goals? If we're, if we're talking about a park project or a water project, how is this going to help us maintain our water quality and be able to serve our water customers, that sort of thing? Because I'm not sure that I think that so many of our decisions are kind of ad hoc and based on feelings rather than what's in this preliminary budget report. That's what I'm concerned about. And I think that moving forward, we have to look at what our long-term goals are and make sure that we're looking, just like we talk about, well, we need to look at every decision through a climate lens. Well, where in the documentation are we really doing that in the staff report? We need to look at this as, will this project be able to pay for itself and support its street and its sewer and its water, not just for the first 20 years, but for 30, 40, 50 years and on and on and on. And that's the criteria, because right now that's where we are. That's why we have roads. That's why we have our streets are in the condition that they're in, is that we don't collect enough property tax to maintain those local streets. Well, we need to stop doing that. We need to stop making decisions like that. We need to start making decisions on the real numbers. And we have the ability to project out that far. And no, is this project going to be able to, with the projected revenues, or is it going to be able to maintain itself? And we need to start asking those questions. Otherwise, we're doing to council members and residents 40 years in the future, we're going to be passing on the same problems that we have right now to the next generation. And it's got to stop somewhere, or this community just isn't going to be economically sustainable. Numbers don't lie.
Right. Absolutely right. And I'm happy to hear that we're not practicing Einstein's theory of insanity when it comes to goal setting and repeating the dot process and expecting, better results to come out of it. So, this conversation's clearly moved in the right direction as far as I'm concerned, because we're going to try new small tests of change. And I like that. Any final comments before we move right along? Hearing none. Okay, we're going to move into standing items. The first one is St. Joseph Health. I saw Becky was on, and if I recall correctly from the minutes, there was a couple of things she was going to try and answer between last meeting and this meeting. So I'm happy to hear that if it's come up. Other than that, any updates on this particular item?
No updates from staff, Mayor, Chair. However, Rebecca Enos may have an update regarding building self-healing communities, or what's otherwise referred to as ACES, if she's available and willing to provide an update in her work with Resilient Cloverdale.
Don't mean to put you on the spot, Becky, but if you have an update, we're all ears.
I am here. I'm just making sure I'm not muted.
We can hear you. Yeah. Welcome. Thanks
Wonderful.
for joining.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate a 5 o'clock meeting. And then also at the same time, I was the one at the last meeting that asked, is this always going to be at 4? And now it's at 5. And then now it's changing to Mondays, which I'm sorry to say, I can't make Monday evenings. I teach a class at that time, but I also am very aware that the world does not revolve around me. So I will figure something out in terms of participation with the group. But yes, I did have some updates. So first, I actually did want to, since this was the first opportunity that I had an opportunity to talk to City Manager Kelly and Councilmember Bagby about our meeting with Joe Hinton from County Health and Rankings and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. That did take place after, I believe, after the previous Police Admin Finance Committee. And so I wasn't aware if they had shared out about their experience or not.
I have not shared out, provide an update regarding that conversation, Rebecca.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm basically was just hoping to hear from you both on some of the conversation, and wanted to also let you know that had taken some of those dashboards, kind of coming off of, good segue from Councilmember Bagby's point about data, but coming off of that meeting and drilling down through some of those dashboards and some of those county indicators of health and how it could be better utilized within specifically the community of Cloverdale, and gauging some of our efforts for resiliency. I think I felt like Councilmember Bagby was sort of preaching to the choir as far as I'm concerned about thinking about future generations and what policies are being created now that will inevitably affect our community and our children, and what they're going to need to be dealing with as it pertains to adverse childhood experiences. So I welcome further discussion on that with either Melanie or David or anyone else, and seeing how best to utilize some of that information that Joe provided. I think it was a very helpful conversation, and he did offline kind of give me a couple of other points in David's question in the meeting about kind of jumping from the philosophical to the actual operational. And that was where I started to move with it in just the last month's health action meeting. And we did get cut short. Conversation was good in that meeting, but hoping to have a little bit more time in the upcoming February 18th health action meeting to digest that a little bit more. So I welcome anyone's participation in that. And then also just some exciting news on the front that I wanted to share with you, because of course, in terms of sustainability, everybody's always gets excited about money. And we are excited about money. Just recently on January 27th, the Sonoma Network of Care Partnership, which is a conglomerate of organizations led by St. Joseph's Health, was awarded $2.9 million by the California Department of Healthcare Services and their ACEs Aware programs to expand on existing efforts in Sonoma County to screen for, address, heal, and prevent adverse childhood experiences. So I certainly won't read the entire project summary to you, but basically, if I could just share a few points. The goal of the 18-month initiative is to develop a community response to ACEs and trauma, an equitable, comprehensive, and community-informed system of resources and referral that will rely on technology, relationships, and innovative thinking to connect people to the resources they need to be resilient. So we will focus on systems integration, so that families and individuals receive seamless and appropriate care, regardless of their level of need within a broader community healing context. And so while the primary focus will be on ACEs transmission prevention and treatment, it will necessarily include attention in other community trauma and related social determinants of health. So as it pertains to health action, community engagement, and Cloverdale, this effort will build upon our recent work in the local chapters of Health Action, Cloverdale being the first of 3 now that are adopting and working and looking on describing self-healing communities model as it pertains to their particular community. We're hoping to engage those communities in further activities to build resilience in response to trauma. The project will bring training and facilitation resources on best practice community engagement from entities such as ACE Interface, Laura Porter, etc. And the goal is to introduce new ways of connecting within the community about what they need and want. So I will be working with Ellen Bauer, who is Chief Administrative Officer of West County Health Centers and has been a longtime advocate in Sonoma County on early ACEs and self-healing communities model well before me. So a lot of exciting things coming down the pipeline and in the next 18 months. So I'm hoping to just be able to bring you guys up to speed more and more and have you participate and dive in with me more and more as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Any questions or comments for Becky at this time? Hearing none. Thanks again for being with us today, Becky. I really appreciate it. It looks like Melanie, you might have had one come up. Did I see that? Did I cut you off there?
Well, I hope that it's something that we can actually integrate into, you know, just down. I think this is one of the things that we talked about in that discussion is how do we really integrate that knowledge into our land use and our street plans? Because, you know, walkable neighborhoods, kids being able to bike to school safely, it has a huge impact on early development. So I would like to find ways to really, for the ACEs training and our, you know, I'd like to find where the rubber meets the road on some of those discussions and those standards and that information. So I'm hoping that that's actually, you know, a really good example of the kind of, you know, lenses that we make, you know, every decision based on, you know, climate adaptation or climate change. Is this good for ACEs? What are we handing down? What kind of environment are kids growing up in that will, you know, affect them for the rest of their lives? And you know, how will this land use decision inform that? So it's just finding ways to bring that information into the everyday decisions, and maybe it's something that we want to, you know, consider when we're you know, setting our goals and our we need to, again, we kind of need to back up a step and talk about the values that inform the goals, and taking ACEs into consideration is really a potential one of those values.
So is it almost something like there's a potential that we could factor in ACEs or things of that nature into like our master plans? So when we're looking at how we're developing Cloverdale as a whole, we look at policy decisions that factor it into our general plan. Okay, I see what you're saying. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, isn't that why we're all here? I mean, isn't that why we all live here and work here and, you know, want to be part of this community? It's for our quality of life. And
well,
you know,
I mean, that's why I'm here.
That's why Becky's here. So yeah, so we just need to keep the conversation going and figure out how to best fold the egg whites into the batter.
Awesome.
You can tell I've been on keto for a while, so I'm stiff cake on my brain. So
that's awesome.
If I may ask a question.
Please do. Oh, did someone ask if they could ask a question?
Oh, sorry, that was really funny. Melanie talked. I did. Oh, I'm sorry, my internet is really slow.
I can hear you
I
better.
apologize. Hang on. Okay. Just wondering, Councilmember Baggy referenced council's values, and I'm wondering if someone could point me in those documents, and that would help me maybe understand how to better bridge the gap.
Well, you know, it's kind of like when we were doing the general plan exercise, and I'm the only one here, I think, only one in this meeting who was here at the time. It was kind of one of the, so we had, you know, we had this series of meetings at the Citrus Fair, and, you know, hundreds, if not 1,000 people participated. I have no idea. It was one of the questions that was one of the questions in one of the, and the exercises that was how you actually formulate your general plan is. So what are your community values and what are your focuses? And so it's kind of, just to kind of answer your question, Becky, it's sort of buried. And I think, you know, city manager and staff could actually probably answer that part of it, but I'm not sure you could answer that's kind of part of the 20-year general plan process in California. But it hasn't really been part of the goal setting in the past, to really set down what are our values and what are our priorities, you know, based on our realities, and then how do we set goals from there, and then have that inform, you know, all of our decisions. The answer is that I don't think the council really does that, and I think that is, as you've been participating and sharing with us the process, I think that that's kind of what I've realized is that we're not actually setting our goals and our priorities based on our stated, any list of stated values. I don't think so. I mean, maybe David will disagree with me, but I don't think we do that.
Well, I think to your point, Councilmember Bagby, we really haven't brought the consideration of healthy communities into the framework for discussing some of our policy goals. And I think that's exactly what Rebecca is doing, is through Health Action, is starting to create a framework around health and how we factor those values that you speak of into the decision-making process that council and staff makes, you know, every day. And that's kind of what it was kind of my big takeaway from our meeting was the need to, you know, operationalize some of these values so that they are considered when council makes decisions, and, you know, asks the question, does this project, for instance, improve the health of our community, and if so, how? And so that it becomes part of that decision-making framework, among others, whether it's fiscally responsible, whether it's good for the environment, and then whether it's healthy for our community. And I think that's the challenge for staff and council, is how do we integrate that into your decision-making process, so it becomes, you know, part of how you evaluate whether to implement a program, a project, an initiative, and where you stand relative to your support or opposition to those projects.
Excellent. Irene, are there any hands raised at the moment?
Hands are raised, Chair.
All right, has everybody had a chance to make their comments or questions on this particular item before I move us right along? All right. Thanks again, Becky. Really appreciate it. And the person you can blame 100% for Mondays at 5 p.m. is this guy right here. And I do apologize, but full transparency, it was my fault. Moving right on to item B, discuss current state of COVID-19 pandemic, initial steps for reopening and recovery after the COVID-19 emergency.
Well, just a real brief update, primarily for the community. I know Chair and Mayor, you're aware of it, and likewise Councilmember Bagby, and that is that since the last meeting, the stay-at-home order, you know, has been lifted, you know, statewide, and at this point we you know, continue to operate within the governor's blueprint for a safer economy, which means for Sonoma County we're still in the purple tier or widespread tier, so there still is a number of restrictions in place, But the good news is that our restaurants were able to open outdoor dining, as well as some of our personal care services and salons were able to open with mitigation strategies. So that's a pretty significant update from our last meeting, and I think it's certainly positive for our business community. Likewise, we are seeing the rollout of vaccines in Sonoma County and across the state. And we did have an update this noon today at Resilient Cloverdale from the Chief Medical Officer at Alexander Valley Healthcare, providing an update on the vaccinations. And there's a lot in development on the vaccine front. There were some announcements from President Biden today. And we might even see a wholesale change in how vaccines are distributed, given that it seems to be a challenge for the county and how they roll it out. So there's going to be likely some major announcements that occur about the vaccine rollout process. So we continue to work with the chamber proactively. We announce and try to promote the economic development board's activities to support our local business community, and work proactively as best as we can to help our business community during this pandemic.
Any questions or comments for David? Thank you, sir. I just have one comment. As I mentioned today during the Resilient Cloverdale meeting, I definitely see the need for wanting as much notice as possible for vaccine shipments, or when Cloverdale may be able to stand up a vaccination center again. But again, as I mentioned, the more and more patterns I see is, for the time being, until some of these small tests of change that the new administration is thinking through really come to fruition, I think we just need to be prepared for the uncomfortable short turnaround times that are going to be asked of us. It'll be a lot of times 48 to maybe 72 hours notice, 4 days at most, that something might be getting stood up or a shipment might be available to us. And while I can completely empathize with the level of discomfort that creates, I'd really encourage all of us as a city to just kind of make our peace with that and do our best to be able to adapt to the quick turnaround times that are going to be required. And I think we'd be doing our Chief Medical Officer at Alexander Valley a great service in shifting our mindset in that direction.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Mayor. I really support that. And I would encourage city staff and chief in that you guys do this all the time, and it's called the Emergency Operations Center. So if we just sort of look at it in that sense, is that we're ready, we're prepared. We have our little boxes of stuff or whatever, and our little task lists all ready to go, whether it's tomorrow or next week, we're ready to go. And I've seen you guys stand up that EOC, at a moment's notice, and I'm sure that we're going to be prepared when we're ready to start putting shots in our residents' arms again. So, but yeah, I think that we, I think some big changes are coming down, and hopefully it's going to improve the organization, because I just think that I think that our county health department has done, even despite all of the criticism, I think that they have done an outstanding job for something that clearly our policy makers weren't ready for this. And I think our health department has responded as best they can. It's just too big a job. It's just too big a job. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what's coming down from the federal level to help us out. There's very, very little money, resources, but people are willing and people are ready to go. So once we have the resources. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that the one time, the kind of practice run that we had, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? That was model. The police department and everybody did a fantastic job. So we'll just, I bet we're ready.
Yep.
We're just not going to get very much sleep.
But I said before, once you develop the operations feature in that, then you can mobilize, you can put it anywhere and it remains the same. So no matter what comes our way, at least that part's in play. And then like the Resilient Cloverdale offered up a substantial amount more volunteers through Jeff and the COPE and the CERT. So, those things are on board. So I feel like we're way prepared, well better prepared than I think most. So,
yeah. And I almost think, right to the chief's point, mentioning the Resilient Cloverdale and the volunteers as part of the criteria, if you want to call it that, because volunteer, we are grateful for your time regardless. But, are you comfortable with the fact that we might say, are you available tomorrow? Are you comfortable with 14 hours notice, 24 hours notice, or anything
Well,
there
that's
within?
what the CERT folks sign up for that.
Okay, cool.
They're trained and they sign up for it. And they pretty much say that by taking that training. So I have a lot of confidence
in that. It'd be
group.
a huge host of volunteers through them. It'd be fantastic. And they were very willing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Irene,
We have Jeff to thank for that.
Yeah. He was on the call today too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No hands are raised, Chair.
All right. Any closing comments or questions on this item before we move on to C? All right. Update on Sonoma County homeless emergency response. Mr. Kelly, if I remember correctly from the minutes, Sonoma County had a meeting in between our last meeting and today.
With there was a meeting of the Continuum of Care Leadership Council, and that's been an ongoing process to reestablish the governance for the Leadership Council that oversees, all the HUD funding for homelessness. In addition, it just came through this last weekend, was a request from BJ Bischoff to reinitiate the Northern Sonoma County homeless planning strategy. This was an effort that was well underway up until about February of 2020 and got sidetracked because of COVID. They would like to, at the direction of Supervisor Gore, reinitiate the process for Northern Sonoma County, so including Windsor, Healdsburg, Cloverdale, and then the unincorporated area. They are asking, previously serving for representing Cloverdale on that committee was now Councilmember Bagby, but at the time when it was initiated was the mayor and the vice mayor, who at the time was Gus Walter. And then Gus continued for I think one meeting because he became the mayor, and so they are asking for who the recognized appointments would be for this new process. My initial thoughts, and of course this is subject to input, mayor and council member, and it could go to council if you so recommend, that it's been the mayor and the vice mayor that have served on that committee for the Northern Sonoma County Homeless Group. I know Gus is interested. Councilmember Walter, he's been kind of involved in the process since the start. And then your vice mayor, Marta Cruz, is also interested. Normally, I would suggest, Mayor, that you attend. Typically, those meetings are kind of early in the afternoon.
That's what I was going to ask: is when do they meet?
And so I was just concerned that it might be difficult with your already busy schedule. So
no, yeah, that's a fair assessment, and it sounds to me, especially with homelessness being a part of the overarching goal and sounds like main category, it really does require consistent and sustainable representation. So consider me not offended whatsoever, and happy to hear your recommendation.
Right. So I mean, I always seek to recommend a council member that's going to provide some continuity, and that could of course be either Councilmember Walter or Councilmember Bagby. I thought of Gus just because I know he's been involved, then the Vice Mayor Cruz. But I haven't approached Vice Mayor about that. I just know she's interested, and she's the alternate for the city's homeless committee.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I really
Please.
recommend that that we make Marta the lead on that because of her position on the subcommittee, and because she's the vice mayor, and you and she can keep in contact and keep up to date. But we need somebody who's either the vice mayor or the mayor to be present on that in that group, and someone who is really going to assert for our best interest. And I certainly, I'm sure that Gus wants to continue to be a part of it. I think it's appropriate for Marta to be the person speaking for us at the table because she is the vice mayor.
I'm happy to support that. I think that's a good idea as long as she's willing. So I guess David, follow up with the vice mayor as you see fit. I don't hear any opposition to that on this call at all.
Okay, we'll do. And I know BJ on behalf of Supervisor Gore is interested in, reinitiating that pretty quickly. And what we've done with respect to our community advisory group for homelessness is scheduled meetings that kind of follow the Northern Sonoma County process, so we can, dovetail in the efforts and make sure that we're not overlapping in terms of our goals and initiatives, and leverage what actions that group is proposing on at least the Northern Sonoma County regional basis, and bring that into as part of our city focused homelessness strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that approach, because one of my biggest pet peeves, I think we can all agree with, is rework. So anything that they're doing or supporting, that we work in concert, but not trying to reinvent the wheel or trying to do something at the same time as them, I think is advantageous. So fantastic. Sounds like you have
kind of a side note to just, so Mr. Mayor, I definitely want to make sure that you work with the vice mayor or get a debrief from the city manager, just so that you're up to speed on it. And I just, after the meeting with Supervisor Gore at the last council meeting, when it kind of turned into a check-in instead of a overview.
Right.
He talked about there being like a North County addendum to the county goal setting, and the fact is that this North County Homeless Advisory Group is a really nice precursor to that kind of a relationship and ongoing plan. So I think it's really important for Cloverdale to have a strong showing, and then make it very clear to the supervisor, to Supervisor Gore and his office, that we are really interested in following this model on other projects and other priorities. And maybe we won't. I mean, I don't know if it's a good idea for us to have a North County or a City of Cloverdale addendum in that plan, but I think it is a really good idea for us to have a Cloverdale working document with our supervisor. I think that if we can't get the first thing that he proposed, then we say, well, we need to have that working document of, this is what we're interested in working on you with. This is what you said you're going to help us with. And then this is where we are with these projects, because the problem with our district is that there's either a fire or a flood, or something, or a pandemic, and and Gore we've been, and I think that in good faith, Gore's office has been like, we want to work with you. We want to help move these projects forward. But there's always, in Stephen Covey speak, there's always a quadrant one activity, like we're putting out a fire, or we're, fixing a levee or something, or the airport's getting flooded or something like that. And we need to have a way that we are tracking these projects and these priorities with our supervisor. So I would charge whoever does end up continuing the process of the homelessness working group, that we set up a model for all of our projects that we're working on with the supervisors. So we start ticking some of this stuff off.
Absolutely. And I think per our instruction to staff, and I've seen a draft, but we haven't quite finalized it yet. We should have the opportunity to discuss this as a full council next Wednesday, because we did ask for kind of what the supervisor told us to bring back so that we could kind of workshop it, so to speak. And so there's an opportunity for us to unify that message through that process as well, even as soon as Wednesday.
Yeah, and if his office can't put it up on a website, we put it on our dashboard. Because
Sure.
we're gonna have the capability to do that, on OpenGov. And when his office doesn't check off his project on his due date, we come calling.
Right. Awesome. Cool.
And Chair, Mayor, and Councilmember Bagby, just a little bit of a foreshadow for our council meeting next Wednesday, the 10th, is staff has prepared a matrix of topics that tie to the policies in the county strategic plan that identify specific initiatives in which the city of Cloverdale and the county can collaborate, work together, or jointly develop programs and projects. So I think it's pretty comprehensive, and I know council will have some additional ideas and thoughts to make it even better. But we are prepared. We heard the conversation and tried our best to capture all the thoughts, the really good thoughts on how we can work together, and again tied it back to the strategic plan. So I'm excited that we're going to bring this forward for council's deliberation. I think it's something that's been needed for a long time. So I think we finally have kind of started the process of putting it down on paper, and then we can build on it from there, and then actually start tracking, see what progress we're going to make on some of these initiatives that have been out there for a long time.
Awesome. I think I already asked if hands were raised, but just in case I didn't, Irene, any hands raised?
Hands, Chair.
Excellent. Any closing comments? Otherwise, we will carry on to the next item. Hearing none. Okay. D is now update on Measure P and cannabis permits. Susie, please.
Yeah, so the report is in part of the agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Let me just get to it.
Any questions that came up, staff? Yep.
Well, I had a question. So gee, what happened in October 2020?
We received a back payment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If only every month could look like that, but that's
I
it.
know.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's October and November, and even
That's almost
December.
like that's almost OPEB numbers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all
Yeah.
past due payments that are being made up.
Good. Okay.
That's great. Is somebody getting a bonus for that?
It makes me think of Susie as like a collections agent. Like, hey man.
Right, I know. How many Elmos did you have to twist to get that?
Oh man.
Good job.
All right. Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate the hard work on that. Any hands raised or any? Do we raise hands for every item? Right? I'm doing this right, aren't I?
Every item.
All right. Good.
No hands are raised.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Any final questions or comments before we carry right on?
Isn't the chief gonna ask how he can spend that?
I think we've talked about this before. If you're giving me that ability, I'll find something. I'd be happy to do that. And I'll give you a full report.
I know I've been in that UTV. It needs a heater. What's that cost?
See?
See, I'm like, what debt can we pay down? What debt can we pay down?
Oh, so you didn't say about paying down debt. You said, what can I use? And I can go out.
I know, it's a different question. I'm sorry.
Oh, goodness. All right.
Chief does have a facility project he wants to bring forward, so.
Yeah, I bet he does.
All right, moving right along. Item E, we're going to do update on pension liability legislation, financing tool, and other.
No updates there. This is just a standing item. As updates become available, we present them. There, we don't have any for the current month.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and carry on from that one. Can't have public comment on something we have no updates for, I imagine. F, update on OpenGov.
There's an update on the last page of your agenda packet with a really nice a Gantt chart showing where we stand relative to the work plan. We're on track for budget and planning deployment, and the senior staff has training scheduled at I think 8:30 tomorrow morning, Susie.
Yeah.
On the budget module. So we're going to be kickstarting the training process for this new tool that Susie and Shannon Peterson have been working on weekly with the deployment team at OpenGov. And Kevin has been leading up the what do we call the permitting, licensing, and code enforcement module. We're a little bit off track because we were originally trying to implement the business license component online, but we since kind of pivoted and went with HDL because we discovered there was a lot of challenges with all of the nuances with business license because of some of the stormwater controls and other things that require routing. So HDL is going to be, we can do it much more effectively with HDL, but Kevin's working diligently to, get all the building permit data online, and council did approve the scanning of records. So we'll be, hopefully be able to bring that in. I think we're looking at go live on the permitting on March 1. So just off a couple of weeks from what we originally anticipated on the permitting side, but we are eager and excited to continue to make progress and be able to use this tool for the preparation of the next year's fiscal year budget.
Excellent. Any questions for David on the Gantt chart or any of the information?
That was just my main question is are we still on target? It sounds like we are, so that sounds great. Yeah, that's too. Yeah. I guess it's not too bad. It's too bad, but not too bad about the business licenses. But that's dive in and live and learn and find the right system. So, yeah, sounds like that's moving forward. I think people are really going to like that once it's all online.
Yeah, we've doubled up our meetings to twice a week instead of once a week for that, so that we can get back on track. So
great.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy the training tomorrow. It sounds like it'll be pretty content heavy, so that'll be good. A lot of learning. All right. Any hands raised on this one, Irene? If you'd be so kind.
It's all worth it. The city of Ukiah. I guess I'm unstable now. Geez. City of Ukiah is loving using those for their budget process, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Right.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Irene, were there any hands? I'm sorry.
No hands, Chair.
Oh, excellent. Any final comments on OpenGov before we move on to the next item? Seeing none. All right. G is going to be update on governance manual.
Mayor, I'm happy to give an update. This week, our city clerk, our HR and finance analyst, Shannon Peterson, and myself met to review the governance manual and kickstart the revision process. We took into account the feedback that was shared in the last finance admin and police subcommittee meeting, and also at the council level. We're kind of taking an approach of identifying, what are the kind of critical issues that we hear council address. For instance, we hear council talk about communication. We hear council talk about technology. We hear council talk about reimbursement of travel and training. We've heard other kind of governance issues, and so our approach is to take on the heavy lifting for council, and we're going to provide going to update key sections and add a number of new sections, and then bring it back for review by the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee. Some of the new sections that we're looking at is based on not necessarily rewriting or creating new sections ourselves, but looking to some of the cities who have very well developed governance policies and incorporating some of that some of their policy language into our governance manual to really bring it up to date. So that's our proposed process. We think we're going to let the other thing we want to do is really make it into a more workable document with hyperlinks that also can link out to appropriate resources, whether it be the League or the Institute for Local Government or ICMA, but also the table of contents, links to the pages, so that it's a more functioning document and not static. And so we want to kind of do that heavy lifting and then bring it back to council and then get your feedback after staff's kind of done that lifting to kind of put that some of the most current up-to-date language into it. So that's our proposed approach. And Irene, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add about your thoughts. There's some there's Irene also has, as the city clerk, also has responsibility for FPPC forms, and there's opportunities to incorporate some of the the filing requirements that that come out of the FPPC into the document too. I think that might be helpful guidance for council, because it's for a new council member. I know the FPPC documentation can be daunting.
Thank you, David. No, I believe you summed it up very well. So I appreciate that. And it's really just if the subcommittee has any other comments, but again, we'll be, we received the list of other cities from our last discussion last year that we'll be looking at as well as new ones. And we'll just go from there. And again, it's just, like David said, another tool, not only to help council staff, but also the public, just, they can open it right up and understand why certain things happen the way they do, or how certain actions are done, etc.
Yeah, I think it's really important to our transparency. We just, as I think I pointed out, we don't even have the current governance manual on the website that I could find. Is that true, Irene? I mean, I couldn't find it posted.
That's accurate, council member.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things. Like, you mean we don't have a security camera at the front door of City Hall? How has that happened? So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing the first swipe based on all of the input and the time that Gus and I spent on it, previously, before we had, the crisis du jour, and kind of getting back into it, because I think it's very important moving forward for transparency's sake, that people in the community see, a values-based code of conduct, how decisions are made, and an in handbook that we all agree to abide by. I think that's really important going forward, especially in this climate. If we're going to have, our budget process, on a dashboard, we should have our ethics and guidelines kind of, in a similar manner.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I figured out I can hit that button there and that button there. Would anyone like from the public like to offer any comment? Seeing no hands go up, I'll bring it back to the dais. The Zoom call panel. I also agree with Melanie. I'm looking forward to the first draft. I know there's been a lot of interest and effort put into this so far, so I'm excited to see what the first draft yields and start offering feedback as necessary. So moving on to number 7 now, we're in future agenda items. I see a few pre-populated, discuss options for future funding and street improvements, technology upgrades, specifically voice over IP for the city, as well as updating the phone tree, which tend to go hand in hand, and other technology improvements. Are there any specific call outs that we want to discuss right now, or shall we just look forward to this on the next meeting?
You know, I think we kind of alluded to it earlier, Mr. Mayor, and actually it's in the budget document as I can't remember what it's called now, but it's basically we need a policy around software as a service and cloud storage before we really can move forward on any of this. So I think we should add that to the future agenda item as a specific and get moving on that.
So do we think
because that's actually going to inform
the
VoIP. Sorry, that's going to inform any VoIP and any digital voicemail as well. So we actually have to get that digital storage policy ironed out first.
Right, I agree with that. So I'm almost thinking we do a future agenda item that's technology, and then within the subset we have policies we have to address. Within the subset, we're going to research technology that could be available to us within the subset, right? So I think technology can go forward as a standing agenda item, and similar to what I saw with COVID, where it kind of breaks down into subsets, we'll be addressing things in priority as they come up. And I concur with Councilmember Bagby. One of the first things we have to look at is where are our holes in policy that we can address and try and check off the list first. Any other items that we wish to add, discuss, anything from staff that jumped out at you? Hearing none, let me see if anybody from the public wants to add a future agenda item. Seeing no hands go up. All right, so we'll move into pending items. I'm seeing none. Anything added since the printing of the agenda? Nope. All right, good of the order. Anybody want to offer a good of the order? Anything you heard out there that would be beneficial for this group to know? Any compliments you may wish to provide?
I just want to thank staff on all their hard work. This is actually a very big meeting that we got through a lot of information quickly. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge everybody's contributions on this. Great job. And whoever our bill collector is, our bouncer or muscle person, my compliments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. I love it. I completely second that. All right. With that, you guys, thank you so much for pivoting your schedule a little bit. I will apologize in advance for the year 2021. We will be having this meeting at 5 o'clock the first Monday. And I really thank your family members at home who have to be away from you a little bit longer, and say Mayor Turner did it. Do not take any of this on yourself. And with that, this meeting is adjourned until Monday, March 1st, 2021 at 5 p.m. Thanks again, everybody. You've been awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well.